Hello and welcome to Women's India Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Wiki, India-Bangladesh Business Council, Reboot India series. And I am Ms. Amrit Nagpal and I'm the head of preschool and ECCD at Girija Gopinath. And today I'm going to be the moderator for today's session. But before we begin to what the session is going to be about, let me introduce a very important guest. I would like to introduce you to Ms. Alakananda Das. She's the president of Wiki, India-Bangladesh Business Council. She is a social worker and an entrepreneur who very strongly believes in a very special mission of making changes for the northeastern region in India by giving them growth opportunities to ensure that the product and the services that the people give, they reach to the right market. And once they reach to the right market, they get the right price for their services. She is very passionate about her work, and she's also the president of Wiki. So over to you, ma'am. You would like to share a few words with our audience?
Yeah, thank you so much, Amrit. So Women's India Chambers of Commerce in India is the first women chamber of commerce founded by Dr. Harvi Darora, who is an eminent philanthropist and is our global president. Wiki has bilateral business council across more than 100 countries. And apart from regional and city councils in India, we are also across 160 sectors in both state and national platforms. Reboot India series is a part of a speaker series wherein we are trying to address the crisis that we are facing in our present scenario. Today's topic, supporting emotional regulation in the early age, is a very trending one as both parents and children in the new normal is going through the worst time. Situation selections, modifications, and distractions are the best strategy to help kids deal with anger and fear at this age, and our eminent panelists will help us to throw more light on how we can deal with the present crisis. So over to you, Amrit, a moderator, to take us through the education edit today. The floor is all yours now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Welcoming everybody who's recently joined into the session. Now, like ma'am mentioned, our topic for today is very essential and it talks about what parents and teachers should be doing during the pandemic. So the topic is supporting emotional regulation in early childhood. And we have our esteemed panel who is going to share about their views. So come, let me introduce you to our panel first. First, on our panel, we've got Dr. Vasavvi Acharjya. She is an edupreneur, a founder chairperson of Early Child Development Forum. She's also the founder of D.N. Acharya Foundation, CEDRC. And along with that, she's the managing director of Tender Petals, Vasu, Talent Search, and IIFPL. She's also an author and a multi-awardee. What an inspiration, Dr. Vasavvi, you give most of us. Truly multifaceted. Thank you so much for being on our panel. Next on our panel is Carrie Sutton. She's an educator, author, speaker, and she has helped over 25,000 parents, educators, and children to change their lives. She has also launched her second book, Raising Mentally Fit Generation, in November 2020. Such an important topic. Do grab your hands on the book. And third on our panel is Girija Gopinath. She is ECS Operations from Ampersand Group, a mindful practitioner, so relevant in today's time. She is managing over 100 preschools and over 30 K-12 schools in India, Maldives, Dubai, and Qatar. So thank you so much, everybody, for being a part of our panel today. Let's begin to the main discussion. We're going to be having 2 rounds of discussion today. In the first round, I am going to be giving each one of you a common question. We would like to know your viewpoints on the same. Each of you have about 3 minutes to summarize your understanding on the same. The first question that I'm going to be asking is to Girija Gopinath. So when we talk about emotional regulation, what do you mean by emotional regulation, and how do we help emotional regulation in early years? If you could let us know.
Thank you, Amrit, Dr. Vasavvi, ECDF, Wiki, Ms. Alakananda, and Carrie Sutton. A pleasure to be with you again. So, Amrit, according to me, emotional regulation, which is also known as self-regulation, is the ability to monitor and manage one's thoughts, feelings, energy state, behavior in a manner that are acceptable and produce positive results such as well-being, loving relationship, and learning. So if we try to break this into simple terms, emotional regulation allows us to understand our behavior, manage our behavior, understand feelings, manage those feelings, understand reactions to those feelings, manage the reactions to those feelings, which we term as response, and understand situation, that is what's going on around us in the environment. So we develop awareness as well. What exactly is happening here is there is a stimuli from the environment, which is external. One makes sense of the stimuli, which is internal. How? Cognitively, by understanding it, emotionally, by feeling it, and one then chooses appropriate coping responses, internal, that is a balancing act. In today's world, it is very, very important. So in short, self-regulation helps us to understand and manage our feelings, reaction to those feelings, to our behavior, and what's going on around us, our environment, and our situations. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Girija. Over to you, Ms. Carrie. What is emotional regulation according to you, and how does it develop during the early years? Over to you, Ms. Carrie.
Amrit, thank you very much. Dr. Vasavvi, Girija, and Alakananda, it is an absolute pleasure to be here tonight, and thank you for the opportunity. How does emotional regulation, and I'll start my stopwatch so I'm keeping to time. How does emotional regulation develop? I guess I look at it from John Gottman's perspective, or the Gottman Institute, looking at self-regulation and emotional regulation and how we can teach that to children, because ultimately, as educators and as parents, we are children's first role models, and particularly in early childhood, in the early years. And I've worked with many early educators in Australia and around the world, and we are the first role models, as well as their parents. And what needs to happen, exactly as Ms. Girija said, we have to help them identify the emotions first. So understand there's three things that with self-regulation, helping them identify the emotions and really understand, oh, it looks like you're angry, or it looks like you might be sad, and then helping them identify what triggers it. And as Ms. Girija said, we were talking about, so cognitively, they may understand I'm angry, but what triggers that and what does it feel like in the body? Because sometimes anger may feel different, or sadness may feel different, or even joy and celebration may feel different for different children. And so we need to, and we would know those children, so you can see their face, and it might be, you look like you're a little frustrated, and helping them name that. And then particularly, as Ms. Girija said, we have to help them learn how to manage it. So self-regulation is about being able to identify the emotion, understand where that feeling's come from, what's triggered it, and then understand healthy coping strategies. Because if somebody steals your spade in the sandpit or your shovel, you might want to hit them over the head, but that's not the best thing to do. So you need to learn how to manage that. However, toddlers or small children and in early childhood years, they may not understand what's the best way. So as educators and parents, we also teach them coping mechanisms. And that's why it's so important for us, I believe personally, to have good self-regulation and emotional intelligence, because that's what we're modeling for them, if that makes sense. So we actually have to be aware of our emotions. Do we know what triggers them, and how do we manage them?
Thank you for wonderfully putting it really short and crisp. It really would help a lot of our viewers. Over to you, Dr. Vasavvi. What is emotional regulation according to you, and how can we help develop emotional regulation in young children?
Thank you, Amrit. And it's wonderful to be in this platform with Girija, Alakananda ma'am, and Carrie, and you, of course. Let me give you a scenario. There's this little girl who is already, I mean, she's got her cousins from other parts, and they are all together, and they're all ready to go out, right? And then there's a small car, which is, let me tell you, it's a Fiat car of those olden days. And everybody hopped into the car, and there was no seat for this little girl, right? And then her mother very apologetically told her that, you know, today probably we will not be able to accommodate you because, you know, you can see that there is no seat for you, right? And the girl feels really angry. She really gets frustrated, and she kind of, you know, really feels sad about it, right? But she says that, okay, it's fine. And then they leave. And this little girl, she sits down to think that, what is this? I mean, why is it that I'm feeling this? And was it fair, you know, to happen this, for this to happen to me? And then again, when she is a little, you know, okay, I mean, she was feeling very sad indeed, but then she thought about it. She saw that, okay, yeah, really, there was no seat, and maybe next time I'll go. And she's regulated her feeling in the sense that she kind of, I would say, she coped it with it on, and she went off to play, and then she forgot about it altogether, and she was happy. So I think this is kind of emotional. I'm just giving an example because everybody said very technically. So I'm just giving an example from my own life, and this little girl was me, and this is how I think I learned coping skills in my life, because, you know, even as youngsters, even as little children, we have lots in our lives, and then, you know, how we regulate it starts right from the start. So maybe I saw my mother always being a very good self-regulator in terms of her emotions. And this is how I started regulating myself. And this is an example that I'm setting, just sharing with you. Thank you so much. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you so much, panelists. I think it really answers all our questions. Let me just summarize the first question for everybody. Emotional regulation is all about understanding one's feeling, ensuring our thoughts are in sync with our feelings, and how do we express our feelings. And Dr. Vasavvi, I really like the example that you shared. I was going to ask you, was that girl you? And you did clarify that in the end. So that was a true example of an emotionally regulated child. And like Ms. Girija and Ms. Carrie mentioned, that only happens when parents and educators become good role models. So come, let's move on to our round 2 and dive a little more deeper into what emotional regulation is. How can we support emotional regulation? And what can we do as adults in our children's life? So my first question here is to Dr. Vasavvi. Dr. Vasavvi, why is emotional regulation important in the early years? And how does it benefit the parents, the teachers, and overall the community who all are working with children? So
thank you so much. Yeah, let me share my screen. Allow me, you know, just a sec. Right, so I guess this is visible and I make it full screen. So what is emotional regulation? We already, you know, my fellow speakers also talked about it, and I had given an example. So we all go through a lot of positive and negative emotions, and it's an everyday thing, you know, because we are right now, maybe I have some positive emotions and something happens, and then suddenly, you know, I get into a whole stream of negative emotions. And for some, these emotions are really overwhelming. They can't like get over them. It's like they just got into a roller coaster ride and they are not in control. So emotional regulation is the ability to effectively manage and respond to an emotional experience, which already Carrie and Girija very beautifully explained, right? So I would just put this in a small quote, which I just read. The idea behind emotional regulation is not to suppress or deny emotions, but to manage them consciously as they shape our words and action. So you asked me, why is it important? Emotional regulation is essential to child's day-to-day life. I'll talk about child because I would, this starts from the very beginning. So how is it important? Because it affects the understanding of a situation, how the child responds, the behavior and the enjoyment of life. Also, it awares one to be aware and in control. Like I already gave you an example, how, that situation, in that situation, I was in control instead of throwing tantrums, hitting somebody. So it's like control of your feelings. It results in lower level of stress because I understood that situation, my stress level went down. Otherwise, I would have been in stress for, till the time they would have come back, and that would have affected my health in some way or the other. It enables one to have healthy relationships, definitely. Helps one focus, concentrate, think, and become resilient. Perform better in school. Yeah, of course, because if we are emotionally more sound, more secure, and more, controlled, we definitely perform better because our focus, our concentration is there. And convert negative emotion to positive emotions. When I was like, I had that very negative feeling, which I can relate to. So many children have it, even in school, even in the class or in every situation. But converting it to into a positive situation, even the COVID times taught us a lot about that, right? Staying calm in the face of adversity. So how self-regulation develops? So I would just say a little on this. See, there are multiple layers of factors that contribute to self-regulation. One is biology and age. Temperament of a child is very important, I would say, because, there are certain children who are very quiet. There are certain children who are very, very, they throw tantrums. So it's obviously the temperament. What is the child like? If we go to, I don't know, no, many would not believe in this, but when a soul comes into, when a soul takes the form of a being, that soul has some past memories also. So I would just talk about it as karma or whatever. So, a child or a person basically has some core instincts. So that's what I would say is the temperament. That also matters. And then as the child grows, they learn self-regulation, like we said, with the support that we have, the caregivers, be it the parents, be it the environment, right? So in a relationship, children are deeply observant, and parents and caregivers are the role models. And these role models actually are the ones the child follows. So it is so important that what kind of relationship we are in while we are, telling children about self-regulation. If I'm modeling something else, and if I'm telling something, it's what I'm modeling that the child is going to take. It's not what I'm saying, because they'll just listen and they'll take it out from the other side of your, and we need to also, elders need to see and consider the emotions that are behind the child's behavior. It may not be always to seek attention, but it might require, the child might require a lot of connection. So we need to look into that. And then cognition, using language, where the child is labeling the emotion. They're sad, they're angry, there is, a lot of anxiety, there's pain. So this again are those, the multiple layers and factors which are there while we are talking about emotions. So do children learn to regulate the emotions naturally, or do they need to be taught? This very quickly I'll be talking about. So children, basically, I would say, they, when we are when a child is crying, they want milk or they want something, they, without verbally expressing, they express their emotions. They show discomfiture, right? But the child, to regulate emotion in the first years, it's very essential that caregivers and parents, they give that support to the child, because in terms of, they need a nurturing environment, an appropriately stimulating environment, so that they can learn about the world around them. And these actually, kind of support that the caregivers give, they fall into these different categories. I've just put it in 3 categories. I'll just talk about that. And that is how the regulatory skills develop. So let us go to this. model for promoting emotional regulation. So when we look into this diagram, warm, responsive relationship, teach self-regulation skills, build a supportive environment, and provide co-regulation. So here, together, when we describe these supportive process of co-regulation between adults and children, it's about providing warm, responsive relationship where the child feels secure and they feel, even in the when they're stressed up, they are confident enough that there is somebody to support them. And this positive relationship will promote self-efficacy in the child to feel secure enough, even when they're making mistakes, because we make a lot of mistakes in our life. So this environment, again, the structure of the environment makes self-regulation manageable, providing buffer against the environmental stressors, like when Carrie talked about the stressors. So, when we have the stressors, we need buffer, even when we are grown up. If I have a stressor, if somebody tells me, oh, it's going to be all right, don't worry, tomorrow is going to be another day, that kind of gives me a buffer to it. So this means creating an environment that is physically and emotionally safe for child to explore and learn at their level of development without serious risk of their well-being. So we need some consistency. We need that supportive environment for the child, to promote emotional regulation. Another thing I would say is through modeling, which we already said, as parents and caregivers, we need to model. If I am jittery, if I am anxious, if I am displaying those kind of things, my child or the children I'm working with will never develop self-regulation. So caregivers actually need to focus on their own calming skills instead of just talking, and they should be modeling it. So here, let us come to some benefits. Very quickly, let me tell you about the benefits. The benefits are many. I've listed only a few. And one is that human learns very quickly during the first 5 years or the first 7 years. Like we always say, this is the time when we learn, we absorb. We are like, we are also like wet cement, when whatever impression falls on us stays, at that point of time. And then we are like sponges, absorbing everything. So at that time of life, if we are, if we learn about self-regulation, if we are getting examples, if we are seeing that in our early years, it particularly helps to wire the brain architecture in the right model, in the right way, so that we can regulate our emotions even when we are grown up and when we are, adults, right? So the brain wiring happens at that point of time, and it is very essential. Other things we can say is critical thinking, problem solving, and coping strategies, focus increases, concentration, analysis, and they perform better in life. So what I would say, Amrit, is that when we self-regulate well, we are better able to control the trajectory of our emotional lives and resulting actions based on our values and sense of purpose. That's what Amelie Mercury said about it. And I truly believe in this. And I think very quickly, though, I must have answered to your questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Vasavvi. You've really put it in a nutshell for us that how children develop emotional regulation. I really like the three folds that you shared with us, and especially the way you ended with the quote. And when you spoke about the brain wiring, it meant a lot, because I think we all know that how brain wiring works. As educators, we definitely know how do the neural pathways and the connections work in our brain. And being emotionally intelligent or being emotionally resilient is so important in today's times. So thank you, Dr. Vasavvi, for throwing some more light on the benefits and how emotional regulation develops. Let's dive deep and move further to Miss Carrie Sutton. So now that Dr. Vasavvi has already, shared how does emotional regulation develop and what are the benefits of it, Dr. Carrie, I would like you to throw some light on what can we as educators do on this subject, because it's truly been a pretty tough couple of months with the pandemic, the COVID. It's definitely terrified a lot of children. Children are a lot more at home with their parents, and they can only see their educators through a screen. And I'm sure that there are challenges that teachers and parents both face, because being in the same field, we do hear a lot of parents and teachers expressing their grievances, their frustrations, and it's just become the new normal for us. So, Miss Carrie, if you could share a few ideas on how teachers and educators could turn these moments of crisis into opportunities for children, and how can they support emotional regulation among young children. So we're really looking forward for some suggestions and strategies. Over to you.
Absolutely. Oh, thank you. Absolutely. I will share my screen and here we go. And get that up. Okay, so can we turn crisis into opportunity? Absolutely, I believe we can. And that's why I look at it and say at the moment, and before we started, we were just discussing the past 18 months and how it has brought many different opportunities. So this COVID has been a crisis, but I loved Ms. Alakanda's definition of it actually provided us with a stoplight. And it sort of made the whole world stop and look around. And hopefully it's getting us to readjust our values or different things, but also taking time with our children, because ultimately this has been an incredibly anxiety-producing time around the world, and children have been picking up on that. And that's why we need to help them turn this crisis into an opportunity. And we can do that, but we just have to look at the ways we're doing it. So I guess for us as educators, yeah, absolutely. Children start developing many new emotions. From around 2 years of age, they'll start expressing these emotions as well, whether it be frustration, anger, embarrassment, fear, happiness, joy, all sorts of different emotions start coming out at this age. And what you see though is that they don't always have the words to express those emotions or the big feelings. So what we see is sometimes you can see it welling up and things are happening, and then they cry or scream or have a tantrum. And you can imagine as adults, if we were in a situation where we didn't have the language to express something, we'd get frustrated as well. And we might, not that we'd throw ourselves on the floor, but we'd express ourselves in ways, and our behavior, exactly as Dr. Vasavvi was talking about, our behavior shows, and children's behavior shows what emotions they're expressing and what emotions they're going through. And that's why, as educators particularly, and I know Ma'am Girija is talking about parents, but I'm talking about educators and why we play such a critical role, because ultimately parents and educators need to work together and be on the same page so that we can be helping our children develop these skills of self-regulation, because life really is a team sport. And unless we learn to regulate our own emotions and regulate our behavior, it becomes a problem, because nobody likes other people who punch people or who scream or who yell at people. That's not how we get on in life. We actually have to get on and negotiate with others and control our own emotions, but also be aware of other people's emotions. So when they do have these tantrums, when they do become overwhelmed with such big feelings, our little people, our children, they need us to help them understand what's going on, because again, these feelings are inside them and they sometimes don't understand. They may feel all of this explosive rage, but what is this? Why is it occurring? So we need to help them do that. And the thing that I've got for everybody this afternoon or this evening is as 5 steps. These are the 5 steps to help children self-regulate. And from an educator's parent or a parent's perspective, the first one is to notice and identify the emotion. So you know the children you work with, and as parents, we know the children. But what we need to do is notice and identify what's going on for them. We can say things, it's paying attention to their behavior and understanding what's happening and looking at it and going, okay, this may be what's going on. This is all taken from John Gottman's research, as well as different things around, and Mike Siegel and the whole brain child. But what they're talking about often is emotion coaching. So we notice and identify the emotion. So as educators, we go, okay, I've seen this happen and I've seen this child respond in this way. Then we actually name and connect the emotion. And in my next slide, I'll give you some examples. But for example, it may be when Dr. Vasavvi's mum said to her, today, it looks like you're not going to be able to go, or you may not be able to fit in the car, or we may not be doing that. And she may have said to Dr. Vasavvi, I know you might be disappointed, or I can see that you're disappointed, but it is okay about this. So what she's done is named the emotion and connected it with the situation so that the child learns, yes, that's what happens. Sometimes if I don't get my own way, or if somebody takes my things, or if that sort of thing, I might feel this way. And then if they do start getting angry, or they're frustrated, or they're crying, what we do is we pause and don't say anything. Exactly as Dr. Vasavvi said before, sometimes we go and we talk too much as educators or parents. We actually need to pause. And sometimes this is hard. I know this has been hard in my parenting. I know it's been hard as an educator, but whether I count to 5 in my head, because the children may come out and actually say something, or they may just need us to be there. Those warm, responsive relationships that Dr. Vasavvi talked about, where we connect with the children and we can say, you know, I understand. I can see you're really frustrated that it's not your turn on the swing yet. I can see you're really frustrated that it's not, that the Zoom call is not working, or that you haven't got the books, or you can't play with your friends because we're not at school. I can see that. I understand it. And then we wait and we pause, because they, as I said, they may talk, or they may need our support when we calm down. So for them to calm down, we also need to give them calming down strategies, and teaching children from a young age what they can do. And I've got another slide that does that. So we give them the strategies. And for one of my students, I know I said, it's not okay to hit your friend because they took that. You can rip paper, you could punch a pillow, you could do things like that. Giving them strategies that they can use that are age appropriate is how we help children learn to regulate their own emotions. Because I'm not sure what it's like in India. Unfortunately, in Australia, there is a lot of domestic violence. And I see a lot of adults, not that I work in that field, but I've seen a lot of adults who punch walls or think that's not acceptable ways of managing our behavior. It's better than punching a person, but what it's showing children is this is how you manage your anger. No. That's not how to be a role model. How to be a role model and regulate our behavior is possibly we go for a run if we're angry, or we do lots of exercise, or we manage it in a healthy way that doesn't hurt or frighten others. And this is what we're teaching our children as role models. And that's why when we answer the first question, we really need to have our own self-awareness and our self-emotional intelligence and self-regulation under control before we start modeling that for children. And then the last part of it is actually address the child's behavior, or problem solve the issue. So you can't address the child's behavior if they have thrown a tantrum, if they have done something wrong in the midst of their emotional dysregulation, or they're not regulated, when they're really upset. You can't talk about the problem behavior then, because honestly what it's done, it's called the amygdala hijack. This part of the brain's taken over and they're all interested. This is where the emotions are done. The prefrontal cortex right here, woohoo, it's flipped, it's not working anymore, and you can't talk about it. Once they're calm and they feel safe and supported in those responsive relationships, the prefrontal cortex, their thinking part, will come back on, and that's when you talk about or problem solve the behavior. So to get into some real life situations and strategies, one child, and it may be that you see this, I know I'm teaching through a screen at the moment to lots of different children around Queensland, around Brisbane, and it wasn't a chore, and it's very hard, trust me, as an educator, my Lord, trying to get into homeschool when you can see something going on the screen and you're trying to navigate through those two situations. But when one child takes a pencil or an object of another child because they really want to, and as an educator, I've had to say, I can see that you're really frustrated. No, it's not okay to hit your brother. Please, no, that's not how we solve the problem. And it's then trying to, hopefully their parents are around, but it's those sorts of things, because what we're doing is understanding, and the child needs to feel that we understand. If they don't think that we understand, if they think that we don't get it, then they're going to switch off. They're not going to do that. So again, whether the toddler's overwhelmed by a strong emotion and ends up having a tantrum or hitting people, and say to them, I can see you're really frustrated, or I can see that. So name the emotion, connect it to what's happened, whether their friend has destroyed their construction that they've been working on, that in my homeschooling situation, the child took a pencil and then drew all over this other child's thing. And we had to negotiate that. And what did that look like? How did I do that through the screen? Because that was really important for that child. And then we actually had a lesson, the whole class had a lesson in that it's not okay to do that. I understand that you wanted that pencil, but it's not okay to take it off somebody else and draw on somebody else's work. Because if you need that, we need to use our words. Now, little people in early childhood sometimes find that difficult, particularly toddlers. So what I've got, and the next real life one, I know it's a very full screen for you. But take a look, if you look down in my, and I don't know if it's in your right-hand corner, but down again, Dr. Vasavvi talked about how we co-regulate. Absolutely, we structure the environment. So we need to know how we're structuring the environment to set it up for success. The activities we're using at our homeschooling or in our day-to-day work with children, are they structured in a way that isn't going to cause problems for self-regulation? Self-regulation in little people in early childhood, it is going to be one of the issues that does come up, but we can structure the environment so it's not as regular an occurrence. Then we teach and coach the skills, and that's what the emotion faces are up in the corner. And it might be because little people, small children don't understand. We have a variety of emotions right there. And please don't worry, everybody, I've converted this into a PDF, so you will have it. We look at the emotion thermometer. So we talk about and get them to regulate their own emotions and talk about how does that work. And I've used that one. Also, and I send this out to my families, that sometimes they want a calm down kit or a coping skills wheel. And we talk about what things they could do. They might listen to music. We do mindful breathing at different times. We talk about coloring in or drawing on our at-home learning lessons. So we give them options to actually go, if you're not coping at the moment, if things are doing a little bit tough, we might go, and we might all get out there and do star jumps or things like that. So there's a whole range of things we can do to help them self-regulate. But the main thing is, as Dr. Vasavvi said, warm, responsive relationships, structuring the environment really well, those 5 key steps, which I'm going to give you, and teaching the self-regulation skills. And I know I'm running out of time, so I'll be really quick. These are all books that you can use. I definitely use lots of children's storybooks because, again, that's how children learn best. So again, you will have those, and I'll put them in a PDF. And thank you very much for everybody. And I'm sorry if I went a bit over time.
Thank you so much, Carrie. I think there were some wonderful suggestions and strategies that educators can use. I love the way you have just listed up a lot of books for educators to refer to. So I'm sure everybody would like to grab their hands on the suggested books and references that you have shared. Wonderfully put across that, yes, as adults, whether we are educators or parents, we need to acknowledge that they are under stress, they're feeling frustrated. Name the emotion is what I like the most, because sometimes we really do not do that as educators and parents. We've got to name the emotion, be in sync, understand that even they can go through a bad temper, a bad emotion. So thank you so much, Kari. Wonderful takeaways from your presentation. Let's move on to Girija Gopinath. We've spoken about educators. Now, another very important stakeholder in a child's life is the parent. The parent or the family is the first school for every child. So my question to you is that, do you think it is important that we involve parents in emotional regulation, or it's just the teachers and the school's job? If yes is your answer, then what can parents do in order to support and develop emotional regulation in young children? And if you have some strategies for parents, we would love to hear. Over to you, Girija.
Thank you, Amrit. I'll just share my screen. Okay, you're able to see the screen? Are you able to see the screen?
Yes, we're able to see it. If you could just full screen it.
Yes, I'll do that. Can you see it now?
We can see your screen, but it's still not full screen.
Oh, okay. All right. Just one second. Sorry. I'm not sure why you're not able to do a. I'm not.
No worries. I think you can start because we can see your screen.
Okay. So your question was, how can parents support emotional regulation? Yes, we can definitely support emotional regulation, and it is definitely the most important duty of a parent, the most important task of parent and primary caregivers to help and teach children how to emotionally regulate themselves. Emotional regulation is not a skill that one may be born with, but the good news is that one can definitely acquire it. And we all understand that toddlers' mood can swing like a pendulum. And so helping them is very, very critical for all of us. So first, let's understand why, why is it that, why the focus on emotional regulation? So emotional regulation is very important, and parents need to teach this to their children because it's important for children to have harmonious relationship with family and friends. It's important for academic performance. It's important for better attention, for problem solving capabilities. It's important for children to focus on tasks, perform better on tasks. It also helps delay quick gratification, focus on long-term goals, long-term mental health, and ability to thrive in this complex world. So how can parents actually teach children to emotionally regulate? One of the most important thing that a parent can ever teach a child is, to be a good role model. For a child always looks up on his or her parent, the mother and the father, or any primary caregivers. So it's very, very important for us as adults and parents, as responsible adults, to adopt and practice better emotional regulation strategies, which means if we are going through frustration, can we manage our frustration? How do we manage our frustration? How do we model our behavior? These are very important, critical, because children catch all this very early in life. They catch the mood, they catch the energy level. So modeling positive emotions and emotional regulation is very critical. It is important for parents to expose children to a positive environment and also to people with good self-regulator skills. How is it that a parent manages or struggles through his or her intense feelings and emotions? Does the parent display anger? Does he or she scream? Definitely, then the child is going to catch it on. Or when faced with challenging decisions, is it that a parent is sitting across calm and then making good decisions in a complex scenario? That is also something a child will catch. So if a parent is going to be calm and make good decisions, obviously and definitely the child is going to model that, and the child will have good self-regulation skills. So one of the most important gift that a parent can give to a child is parental modeling. That's the best way to teach children emotional regulation. When a child is going through big emotions that Carrie spoke about, so what is the best thing to do? One of the best strategy that a child, besides the modeling that a parent can do, is change the environment. If the child is in a scenario where, or a situation where he or she is going through big emotions like frustration, anger, agitation, then can we quickly change the environment? Can we eliminate any other distractions, focus on the child? Can we allow the child to steam off, let the child be? Can we create a soothing environment, a soothing corner? Switch off TV, dim the lights, provide a soothing object, put some pillows together, put up a tent, uh, teach the child to breathe. The most important thing that we can in this situation, when a child is going through an emotional outburst, is can we just calmly, hold the child and tell the child to breathe. Very, very important for us to teach our children to name their emotions. When a child is going through a big emotion, a big feeling, be warm and accepting and responsive to the child's emotional need. The most important thing at that point in time that you can do is just give a good hug to the child. Allow the child to talk about the feeling. Ask how are they feeling? What are they feeling? Sit and listen to the child patiently. These children are trying to say something through their emotions. Accept, support, show empathy to validate their feelings. Be patient throughout when the child is going through a situation. Do not ignore or dismiss or discourage, punish, or negatively react to the emotions, especially when the child is dealing with big emotions that he is unable to understand. So most importantly, what I feel is, first and foremost, it's important for parents to do some self-care methods for themselves. It is very important for a parent, when he or she is going through a frustration or an agitation, to breathe and balance, because the child is watching you. Do not ever get carried away by the child's big emotions. It's your job to, at that point in time, to be balanced, to be the calm. It is also very, very important for parents to understand learn some relaxation methods, listen to soothing music. It is good for parents to be mindful, do some meditation and yoga activities. Some activity like running, swimming, aerobics, all these activities are self-care methods where the parents can learn to first self-regulate themselves. Adequate sleep is very, very critical for every adult, and so it is for children. So it's very, very important for all of us adults to first take care of ourselves. And that is when we will try and understand what the child is going through and give a balanced calm to the child. That's from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, panelists. There were some wonderful inputs and takeaways. I would just like to collate all of it and summarize for our audience. What we've learned today from our esteemed panel is that it's important that children need to understand what self-regulation is, what emotional regulation is. And to understand that, we need to understand that it's not something that we are born with. It's not innate. You've got to develop it and harness it like a skill. That understanding is extremely important. Once we've understood that, it is important that we help the child as an adult, whether you're an educator or a parent, be the right role model to model the right kind of behavior. Help children name the emotion. That is what has been echoing all through all our panelists. Help children name the emotion. Once they have learned to name the emotion themselves, and please help them understand what is okay, what is not okay in terms of behavior. Quoting Miss Carrie right now, I really liked the first presentation that you began with the first slide. The child was all frustrated, and that's how most children are. And this pandemic has been tough on children most than adults, because they are frustrated because they don't get to go out. They don't get to go to the park, they don't get to go to the garden, they don't get to do any physical activity. It is they who are more frustrated than all of us as adults. So we need to understand that and help them not only name the emotion, help them to understand how to deal with it. Another important takeaway that I really liked in today's session is that not only help children not punch somebody or punch the wall, help children how to regulate it in a better way. Maybe go out for a run, maybe do jumping jacks, just to release your stress and your anger and your frustration. So that could be a nice activity that parents or educators could use, because jumping jacks can happen right at one spot. That could be great. Thank you all the panelists for wonderful takeaways. Thank you, Ms. Carrie, for suggesting a number of books and strategies to our educators. And thank you, Girija, for guiding parents on what parents could do at home. Thank you, Dr. Vasavvi, for explaining in detail how to develop emotional resilience and emotional intelligence in children. I would like to reiterate, it is a skill that we all need to develop and harness. That is the biggest takeaway that we've got from our panel today. I now open the panel to any questions. So if anybody would like to ask a few questions to our panelists, now is the time. You can put your questions in the chat box. Our panel would be happy to answer, or you could unmute yourself and ask them a question.
May I ask a question? I'm Nutan from Delhi. May I ask a question, please?
Yes, please go ahead.
It was indeed a very, very interesting session. My kids are grown up. I have grandkids now. But what exactly I do correlate with what all you were saying, that, it has been really stressful for little kids. My grandkids are from 3 years until 15. So the older ones could manage very well, the iPad, they have their friends or something they could do. But the little one who's 3 years old, he found it so difficult because, for one, he is, I would say, full of energy, full of beans. He would at least climb up and down the steps of the house about 50, 60 steps in the day, 4, 5 times, and yet not run out of steam. So tell me how, I would give him the iPad, I would give him the phone. So he would just keep listening to the music. But the energy is so much and so focused it is that tell me, how can you take care of people like babies like this? How to keep them occupied? Yeah, that's it, Ji.
Thank you, Nutan, for the question. Would anybody from the panel would like to volunteer to answer the question?
I'm happy to take it. I'm working with a whole, quite a variety of families at the moment who have similar situations, Nutan, because we've just been placed into lockdown here, and it's fairly significant lockdown. We actually tuned in to I suggested that they tune into the Olympics. And so we make Olympic activities that they can do. So we look at the Olympics and model it off the Olympics, like you just with the things you've got at home, but lots of physical jumping. I know it sounds crazy. We get them to do you run down the hall and jump into a pile of pillows. So that's long jump or high jump. Like you just try and do things like that, because being at home and with the Delta strain, a lot of families can't go out, like they're actually isolated in their houses. They can't go out for anything. And so they're saying to me, what do we do? And I said, well, look, at least the Olympics is on. Can you download some information? And we just say to them that they're in their own Olympic Games, that we're going to have a competition. So they, with their friends and like their family friends, they take photos and say, we got this far or that far, or we did this many sit-ups today, or those sorts of things. So that's how they're trying to. I'm not saying it would work for everybody, but I guess they seem to be at least getting more of that energy out.
Yeah, that's a brilliant suggestion. Yeah, thank you. Because amongst the things we do, this was a very great added on suggestion. And thank you, because most of the kids are not only dealing with boredom, but dealing with their body fat, which they're not able to melt away. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I hope Ms. Nutan, Ms. Carrie has answered your question. And I think a wonderful suggestion, Ms. Carrie.
Yes.
I think most educators would like to implement in their schools, a wonderful suggestion. You could have an Olympic marathon at home with parents and children being involved in few activities that they could just use home equipments.
Yeah.
Anybody else who would like to ask a question to our panel? Our panel would be extremely happy to answer.
I think the rest of them are perfect parents. It was me with full of imperfections, which needed some kind of, suggestions. But very, very wonderful, wonderful session. And, it's so educative. Do thank all the panelists and Alakananda. It's a session that was long, long overdue. And, in times like this, we need more of these.
Definitely.
Thank you so much, Ms. Newton. All I would like to say is we all are in the same boat. I'm glad that you asked a question, and I'm sure you benefited the other audience and the participants over here. So thank you for asking a question like that. It meant a lot. Since we don't have any more questions, I would like to thank all the panelists for spending their precious time and their most valuable information with our participants and the audience. A big thank you to Ms. Alakananda Das, who is the president of Wiki. Thank you so much. We wish everybody a pleasant evening ahead and a happy and a safe weekend ahead. Please stay home, please stay safe, and ensure your children are emotionally regulated when they are in crisis, because that is an opportunity for you, whether you are an educator or a parent. Thank you so much. Have a great evening ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Amrit, and thank you, Dr. Vasavvi, for arranging this the webinar today. And I would like to thank Carrie and Girija also for sharing their views. It was really an enlightening session. And we at Wiki are very grateful for this session today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy to be part of it.
Yeah, we'll look forward for more sessions.
Thank you so much.